Welcome, everybody. This is episode 1 of the Full Court Trap podcast. With me are my co hosts Blake Smith, Luke Tackett, and Jack Sullivan. I'm Daniel Fowl. I'm your main host. I'm from Georgia, 21 years old, and I give these guys a chance to introduce themselves.
I'm Blake Smith. I'm the founder of Recruit Zone. I've got over 30,000 followers, and I'm currently working on the side with Made Hoops.
My name's Luke Tackett, Lexington, Kentucky native. Going to college right now, getting that degree, talking hoops.
Yeah, I'm Jack Sullivan from the great city of Chicago. And easy as that, I know ball.
Simple as that. Simple as that.
Keep it simple.
As we can all tell, it's not hard for Luke to hide who he's a fan of.
Oh, yeah. I was born into it. I'm not going to hide it. I'm Big Blue all the way. If I say something negative about Arkansas or Louisville, it doesn't mean I hate the teams. No bias here. I speak the truth, and I'm not going to be afraid to let it fly. I'm not biased. That's all I'm saying.
No bias at all in this podcast.
Here. No bias zone. No bias.
Absolutely none. Well, all right, fellas. We got a lot of topics to get into today. Number 1 being our preseason rankings thoughts. So what do y'all think about that? Who do y'all think would be a little too overrated and a little too underrated based off the preseason poll?
Personally, I think Purdue is a tad bit overrated. They're ranked, I believe, 11 in that range. And after losing like Zach Edey, their number 1 option, I just don't believe they have enough scoring options at this point to bring them forward and make them go to a big push in March.
Good take.
All right. Well, sticking with the overrated category, I'll get to the underrated. I'm going with Texas A&M. They're at 13. I don't know. I don't like what I see there. They've got that same core with Wade Taylor and all those guys, but the past 2 seasons, they haven't been able to get out of the first weekend of the tournament. I don't see that changing this year. I mean, they've got a decent amount of talent, but can they put it together in March? I don't know, and I'm not going to bet on them doing it until I see it, so that would be one team I think we may want to take down a few notches, but maybe they'll prove me wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the most overrated team pretty easily to me is Houston. Houston's a great team led by a great coach, Kelvin Sampson. He's going to win you games, but the loss of Jamal Shed, I think it takes them down a notch. I don't think their ceiling is as high. Their floor is always going to be high. They'll definitely make the Sweet 16. I don't think they have any chance of a national championship. We saw last year, it's catastrophic the minute Jamal Shed went down. That offense was one of the biggest disasters I've seen in a long time. He just brought a different type of toughness, a different type of leadership. And I don't think Milos Uzan, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't think he can replicate that type of identity that Jamal Shed brought to Houston.
I like that take, Jack. I agree with that wholeheartedly, to be honest with y'all. Personally, for myself, I would say overrated. I'm going to have to go with Gonzaga. Now, overrated as in, I think they're just not, what are they, 6th in the AP poll, I believe? I just don't think they're the 6th best team in the country right now. That's going to take time. I think they got a decently young roster, and even though they got a good amount of returning talent, I just don't see nobody on that team with a real it factor. But, I mean, I'm not going to say they shouldn't be ranked at all. I could easily see them being in the top 20. Just 6 seems kind of a stretch for me. But moving on, what teams do y'all think y'all have in y'all's underrated category?
Personally, I believe that UCLA is a tad bit underrated. They're, I believe, at the 21st ranked spot, and they got some guys that are coming back, and also that they brought in. Dylan Andrews is a guy that I think can help lead them to a big run in March. I believe Sebastian Mack will be a solid factor. They brought in Kobe Johnson, who's the younger brother of Jalen Johnson. And then they got Sky Clark coming back, who I believe is a very underrated player. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He's been plagued by injuries, but I believe this season he'll take it one step to the max. And then they got Dominic Harris, who was a Gonzaga guy. And they also brought in Eric Daly Jr., who was actually in the class of 2022, but ended up going the JUCO route, I believe. And he'll be a good piece. And then lastly, Ade Mara. He's an overseas guy. He's 7'3", 240 pounds. I think he'll have an amazing year.
Scott Clark, I forgot about him. One-time
Yeah.
Kentucky net. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
still now. Okay.
Yeah.
For my underrated, I'm going with the Gators, Florida. So, look, I was in Rupp Arena last year watching Walter Clayton Jr. absolutely chew us apart, and I won't be surprised if he does that in March again. He seems like a type of guy that could lead Florida to a deep run in March. They've got they lost Zion Pullen and Riley Kugel, but they've got some good talent coming in. Elijah Martin from FAU. They got that huge center, Olivier Ryu. I want to say that I'm saying that
Oh
right.
yeah, the freshman from IMG.
Mhm.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
got
What is he?
him.
I think 7'6".
He's 7'9".
Yeah, seven.
He's a unit, but he's a
7'9".
walk-on though, so I don't think he's going to
God,
be playing
Easy.
Yeah.
that
that's
much.
crazy. He taller than Rob Bobrovsky, ain't he? Yeah, that's
He is.
insane. Especially with the size that kid has on him. You know, he's just not skin and bones.
Yeah, they got a good amount of talent, and Todd Golden, I think he's a very good coach. What he's built there over the last 2 years, I think he's been there now. I think that this could be the year that he has a big breakthrough and that they compete for top four, top three in the SEC. And I definitely think we'll see them in the second week of the tournament. Maybe they could even be a dark horse for a Final Four at some point. I want to say they're 21 in the poll, but I think they could easily be in maybe that like 13 to 15 range. I will not be surprised if they have a big year this year. And yeah.
Yeah, I would say Indiana. They're ranked 17th. They're the most underrated team in this poll, pretty easily in my book. I mean, you look at their guard play. Miles Rice, who I'll talk about a little later. He's very, very good. That Tennessee exhibition game, he looked very good. Mackenzie Mbako, he's an NBA player. We all know that. It's just takes time in that Indiana system. Umar Ballo, he's a double-double machine. He's going to get you rebounds. He's going to dunk the ball. They added Cannon Carlisle too from the transfer portal. He's a solid two guard. He could be coming off the bench depending on what that Mike Woodson does with Trey Galloway. And then Malik Renault, he might be their best player. He might actually score the most in the team. I would say Miles Rice is the most impactful. Once again, I'll get into that. But they bring some quality talent off the bench too. They have Luke Goody, who's a sharpshooter, what Indiana really needs, and Bryson Tucker, who's could possibly be one and done. I think he'll be two, but the kid is extremely good talent off the bench for them. And I would say Indiana right now, they're a top 10 team. I think they're definitely a lot higher than 17. Would not be shocked if they're in that 8-10 range at
Fair
all
take.
this upcoming season.
It's a good take. And yeah, going back to you, Tay, I'm excited to watch that tall freshman for Florida. That'll be something crazy to witness. But
Yeah, I think Walter Clayton, and I forgot to throw in another of the returning guys, Condon and Micah Lockton, I think is how you say his last name. He got hurt in the SEC tournament, had that tough leg injury, but I think those two in the front court are going to be big pieces there, and I think they're going to dominate the front court in the SEC. They're going to be a tough outing for everybody.
agreed. Plus, with that experienced backcourt, yeah, they'll probably be a pretty solid team this year if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Then going on to our next kind of rolling into that, teams that we think should be ranked. Mine, personally, I think it should be Grand Canyon. I really like the returning talent they got there. I mean, obviously, you can't ignore Ty and Grant Foster, one of the biggest names in the tournament last year. And I think, without a doubt, we'll see him in March Madness this season and could very well see him go into the second week.
I think St. John's personally should be ranked. They had a decent amount of votes actually to be in the top 25, but didn't quite make it. They just had a good performance recently in the exhibition game. I understand the exhibition games really don't tell the full story of how a team will perform mid-season, but I believe guys like Simeon Wilcher, who was once thought to be a North Carolina lean out of high school, who was actually committed there at one point, was going to take UNC to the next level. He ended up transferring to St. John's. He just put up 15, 6, and 3 recently, and he showed off a lot of athleticism. I think he'll be a huge piece in their season this year. And I also think Jaden Glover, who's a freshman, and Vince Iwuchukwu, I hope I said that right. He's, I believe, a junior this year. He's 7 foot. He'll be a solid piece coming out of Montverde. And yeah, I think St. John's got it.
St. John's, I like that pick, Blake.
Thank
This
you.
one, it pains me to my core with the colors I got going on right now, but I'm going Louisville. I don't see how they weren't in that top 25. I mean, the Kenny Payne era, let's just be frank here, complete disaster. I mean, that's over with. Pat Kelsey, he's completely re-energized that fan base, and he brought in a loaded portal class, 13 guys in total, I think. Kayshawn Pryor, Chucky Hepburn, I think they're going to be two guys to keep a lookout for. But yeah, and I mean, they dominated their exhibition game recently. Like Blake said, we don't put stock into exhibition games, but believe it or not, they were losing exhibition games with Kenny Payne. So this is a step up for Louisville already. But yeah, I won't be surprised at all if you see them fighting up there at the top of the ACC, competing with the likes of Duke, UNC, and all those other top dogs over there. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Louisville making it in the top 25 pretty quickly.
Yeah, so my team is Oregon. I'm very high in the Ducks this year. They're moving to the Big Ten, so that'll be a little change of scenery. It's possible they could drop some games, though, to those teams on the East Coast, such as Rutgers or Penn State. But the guys they have this year, I think Jackson Shellstead, Jesus, I think he's going to be an absolute bucket. Like, this kid is very, 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 very good. KJ Evans, he's another kid who's going to break out, I think. They added in some quality talent from the portal. James Angel, Supreme Cook, and TJ Baum. I think those guys can definitely fill out the rest of the roster around Shellstad because it's his team now, and he can take that Oregon team pretty far. I think they made the tournament last year off winning the last ever Pac-12 tournament. But I do think this Oregon team should definitely be ranked, definitely should be considered, and they have the guys to definitely be ranked in this preseason top 25.
It's a solid take. I can't lie with that. And yeah, Taggart, I'm a big fan of that Pat Kelsey hire. I think he's going to do good things for Louisville, if I had to say so myself.
Crazy.
Well, speaking of the exhibition games, fellas, what players y'all think kind of stood out to y'all and maybe give you an insight on how they'll be this season?
So the player that stood out to me, I already talked about, it's Miles Rice. So that game against Tennessee, like we said, exhibition games, they don't really mean that much. Obviously, it's no win, no loss. But that was his team. That Indiana team last year lacks guards. Like, there were no guards last year. I think this is showing to me, at least, he's a guy. Like, in the end of the game, very close game, tight defense, shots aren't going in. He said, "All right, give me the ball. This is my shit. Let's roll the fucking dice, and here we'll go like that." But yeah, I think his three-pointer wasn't falling, but I mean, he's going to bring Indiana pretty far, especially with the talent around him compared to Washington State, who is also a very good team. I think the sky is the limit for the kid going forward.
I agree.
I think Jackson Robinson personally was by far one of the best players out of like the exhibition games that I got to sit down and watch. I get there's guys like Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, those newcomers that showed out recently, but Jackson Robinson, man, he 8 threes in the game against Minnesota State, who actually just won a national championship in D2. Like, come on. I get it's not D1 level guys that he played against, but it was dang close to it, and he just outshined them. I think his length is going to be a problem this season as a 2 guard, and with the ball in his hand or even off ball, I think he's going to be dominant as a scorer.
So I know Taggart loves that take.
Love that pick, yeah.
Yeah.
He was exciting to watch in those exhibition games. But for me, I'm not going with the UK guy here. I'm actually going with Seth Trimble, North Carolina. In that game against Memphis, he dropped 33 points, and he hit 3 out of 5 threes. I mean, he wasn't getting a whole lot of time.
Shooting that motherfucker.
He wasn't getting a whole lot of time the last couple of years in North Carolina. I think last season he averaged around about 17 minutes a game, but I think he's going to elevate a little bit higher this year from going to a role player to a solid piece of their core, what they do and their starting five, etc. And yeah, he was just attacking the rim with physicality. He was getting in passing lanes and breaking down his defenders off the dribble, getting some mid-range shots up. And I liked what I saw against them. Memphis, I think, is going to be a quality team too. So I think that's telling that he showed out like that.
No, yeah, I could definitely see Seth Trimble breaking out this season. I mean, with a team stacked full of guards like North Carolina is, I still think we're going to have at least, RJ Davis is obviously going to do his thing. There's no doubt about that. But I think we're going to have to see another guard breakout as well for them to have some sort of, deep postseason run. And I would definitely bet my money on that being him without a doubt. Now, speaking of stacked guard play, I'd say my potential breakout just from watching the exhibition games is going to be Con Kneppel. Duke has obviously got one of the most loaded rosters in college basketball this year, not just with guards, but down low too, bringing in Mason Gillis, who I thought was a great transfer portal pickup. And with a team, loaded with such returning talent, you got Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, dudes like that. I still think that Duke's going to have a three freshmen in the lineup, with that being Colin Kneppel, Cooper Flagg, and then the tall guy, Common Malik, I believe, if I'm saying that right. I think that Khan is easily going to be able to. I think he's going to be at least a 14 points per game scorer. That's obviously his strong suit. He can really shoot that ball and just score pretty well at all three levels, I'd say. And guys like Cooper Flagg, they're going to be able to facilitate to him well. Same with Proctor and Foster as well. But I think still with such a loaded scoring roster, I think Khan's still going to do his thing and find a way to score the ball every single game. But with that being said, kind of hinting on that, what are some players y'all see breaking out this season as a whole?
I think I'm looking at DJ Wagner over at Arkansas. He had his moments last year at UK. I mean, he showed potential. He was dealing with nagging injuries the whole year. But I mean, I was looking at last night at some of his performances from last year. Georgia, he had dropped 18 points on 10 assists. Was very efficient in that game. I remember distributing the ball really well. Dropped 28 on Marshall at one point last year. He averaged close to 10 points a game at UK's first year. I would definitely look for that to go up maybe about 12 or 13 at Arkansas, because I think he's really going to take over that starting point guard spot. Playing alongside Boogie Flan was more of like a combo guard for Boogie. But I think what I just want to see from him, based off what I saw last year at UK, I want to see him knock down the three ball a little bit more consistently. And I want to see him put a little bit more effort on the defensive end. He showed it in flashes last year, but that Kentucky team was just bad all around defensively. That was tough to watch at times, but I think if he can take a step up there, keep doing what he does, breaking down guys off the dribble and getting to the hoop, I think that he will definitely be looking at a round one draft pick ability at the end of the season. And I hope he does well. I hated to see him go with the departure of Cal. I know we're going to touch on that later, but I hope he does great. I was a big fan of his game in high school. I really wanted him to put it all together at UK, and like I said, those injuries kind of kept him from that, but I'm definitely expecting a breakout year for him.
Yeah, I already talked about the team, Oregon. It's Jackson Shelstad. He put up 13, 3, and 3 last year as a true freshman. He's an undersized guard. Doesn't matter. He can score at all three levels, through contact, from deep. He's a just complete bucket getter. He can pass the ball, obviously, but Jermaine Couisnard is gone. It's his show now. It's his team. He can run it. I think there's a legit chance, and this is probably a hot take. Depending on how long he stays, he could be better than Peyton Pritchard at Oregon all time. I think it's genuinely possible. He could undoubtedly be a better player than Peyton Pritchard. He just has that ability. I think he has some talent around him that could definitely help him out. He has TJ Bamba, who's an experienced, solid two guard, who's very solid two guard, who from Villanova, even though they struggled. Washington State was a solid Pac-12 team for a couple of years, but I think this is his chance to really break out in the national scene. He obviously had a good year last year, but I think this is a potential opportunity for him to average about like 18, 19 a game and about 6 to 7 assists. And he definitely will be competing with Braden Smith and Miles Rice for the top point guard in the Big Ten. I think there's also a chance he could win the Big Ten Player of the Year, but we'll see when the season starts, obviously, because that Big Ten, they're a little short on talent this year, but Braden Smith, that kid can play. And I think everybody knows that.
And then for me, I believe that Solomon Ball, most known by Solo Ball, out of UConn, he's a sophomore this season. He's going to be starting at the 1 or 2. I forget which one it's going to be, but he's a southpaw combo guard. He went off against Rhode Island. He had, I believe it was 18 points or so. I know he went 3 of 6 from three, which is a big improvement from last year. He just shot 23 of 72 from behind the arc, and that was his biggest weakness in the game. He's explosive at the rim. He's really crafty with the ball in his hands, and I just believe his production is going to go way up after averaging just 6.3 points a game last season. And I think depending on how that UConn team meshes together, I believe he can be a big part in the run and March.
I definitely agree. And I mean, shoot, you got to be a good ball player if your name's Solo Ball. But I guess
Yeah.
personally for me, speaking on what Tackett said earlier, and I said I'd bet on him breaking out. I think it's going to be Seth Trimble. I mean, I know we're going off an exhibition game, which take those with a grain of salt most of the time. But when it comes to individual player performances, I mean, he looked really smooth with the ball in his hands. He looked like he knew what he was doing. And I mean, regardless, I don't think he's going to be a 20-point scorer this year. I think they're going to leave that up to RJ Davis, but I can easily see him being the second option on the team this year. And, whether that's running the one or the two. But yeah, regardless, I think he's going to break out this year. But yeah, Blake, speaking on what you said with Solo Ball and kind of the new look UConn, how y'all boys feel about that? What do y'all think with Dan Hurley's new squad?
Personally, I got mixed feelings on them. They got some talent with Liam McNeely coming in, who was once an IU commit. He's a very good 3-and-D guy. They have Solo Ball that I already talked about. They also have Terrace Reed coming in. He's from Michigan. I believe he'll be a productive player for them. They'll have Hassan Diarra at the point. They also have national championship winner a couple times, Alex Carabin, who's going to be a very good 3-and-D guy as well. And personally, I think their ceiling right now is going to be a Sweet 16, Elite 8 exit. It's hard in the sport of basketball, any sport actually, to win a championship, not once, not twice, but heck, even 3 times, which is what UConn's going to be chasing this year. But then the other side of me believes that Dan Hurley is just a heck of a coach. Like, he's one of the best coaches I've ever seen in my life at any level, and it's hard to count him out, truthfully. So I could see it going national championship run, or I could see, on the other hand, a Sweet 16, Elite 8 exit.
Yeah, going back to what Blake said about the Sweet 16, Elite 8, I think that's like a pretty reasonable expectation because, I mean, back-to-back even, doing it twice, that's hard enough. 3 times, that's unprecedented. But at the same time, I don't want to discredit UConn at all because Dan Hurley may show up at my door ready to fight me based off some of his social media interactions this offseason. But
No, yeah, I can see that. That's for sure.
that dude, he's on top of the basketball world right now. I mean, you turn down the Lakers in the NBA, the most prestigious professional job, and then you turn down Kentucky as well, which he was a pipe dream from the start. But I mean, that dude, he is unlike anything I've ever seen. The video I think everybody's seen of him in practice this summer, that intensity, man, I just love to see that. I mean, he runs that place just like so tightly knit, and everybody's got to earn their spot. So Liam McNeely, I definitely think that he's going to be a nice add. Aiden Mahaney, the transfer, I definitely think that he's going to be a stabilizing piece for them. And Caravan coming back, that's pretty big. But at the end of the day, in terms of a three-peat, I mean, replacing the likes of Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, just all those guys, Stephon Castle, Donovan Clingan, that's a lot of production that you're losing, and that's a lot of championship DNA that's leaving your program. But it's like I said, I'm not counting Dan Hurley out until the clock hits triple zeros and he's on the losing end because he's just that well respected as a coach. But I think Sweet 16 Elite 8 is a decent expectation for him, and I think UConn fans should be happy with that if that's what they get following this run of dominance the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. There's like a close to 0% chance here, guys. Like, I mean, yeah, Dan Hurley's a psychopath. Yeah, he's a very good coach. Like, let's look at the roster though, for real. Like, Liam McNeely's a good ball player. Can he do anything besides catch and shoot threes? Do you see him driving? Do you see him driving to the hoop finishing through contact. You see him playing defense. I mean, you look at their point guard position, you look at their center position, gaping holes. I think Hassan Diarra, he's a very good off the bench point guard. Samson Johnson, he's a very good off the bench center. I think you elevate them to starters. I think your ceiling takes a massive hit. I think your floor stays the same, definitely, because they can elevate the floor, but I don't think they're championship level guys. I'll just put it blankly. And then Alex Caravan, I don't think he is a capable first option. I think he is suited for being a third or fourth 3-and-D level player. I think you move him to the first option. I think it's a close to disaster, not disaster level, but barely treading waters, because I just don't think he has it in him. He's great cutting without the ball. He's obviously a great shooter, but I just don't see it with this roster. I think Aiden Mahaney, he's gonna have to take a step up. It's the Big East is a tough league. I think it's a little down in terms of talent, in terms of the top level teams that we've seen before, but it's still a tough team, tough league to win in for sure. And Patino's gonna have them afloat. I'm sorry, Patino, Jesus. Dan Hurley's gonna have them at the top of the conference, top 10 probably all year, top 15 in that range. I don't think a national championship, a Final Four is anywhere near the realm of possibility. I think a round of 32 exit is more possible than a Final Four right now, to be quite frank with you.
And Sully's coming right for him, gosh.
No, I don't. They have a good team. They have the best coach in college basketball, but I just do not like the roster makeup. Solomon Ball is a good player, but they do not have NBA talent. I don't think Liam McNeely is an NBA player personally. He's going to be a very good college player, but I mean, unless he shows that he can do other stuff without the ball, cutting to the basket, finishing through contact, and playing defense, then I could see him in the NBA. Until then, he's just a spot up shooter. That for me.
Okay, let's say
honestly, I kind of agree with all of y'all on this topic. Jack, personally, I do agree. I don't know if their roster as of right now is good enough to go all the way. They got a lot of decent talent, but I just don't know if they have, national championship level talent. I like Aiden Mahaney, and I've always liked him since his freshman year at, St. Mary's. But as far as it goes, is I guess kind of going back to what you said, is not having a number one option. And if that number one option is Alex Caravan, I don't really know if that's going to be the best possible scenario for them. So, talent wise on the roster, I agree that I don't know if they're going to be good enough to go all the way. But at the end of the day, like Taggett was saying, Dan Hurley with those practice videos, I mean, if you haven't seen him, go check him out. That dude's insane. I mean, call me crazy, but at the pace he's going right now, I can see him being kind of the Saban of college basketball, just in the way that he chases perfection no matter what it is. I mean, them boys could be up by 30 and he could still be pissed off about something.
I'll say though, if this reaches the UConn locker room, we're screwed personally, because he's going to take this to as bulletproof material. Hopefully it never does, because I accidentally would have just gave UConn another championship, but. I mean, we'll see from there. I stand at what I said.
Let's say something hypothetically. I want to go back to what Sully said. So let's say Diarra, Terrace Reed, Samson Johnson, those guys that are kind of unknown commodities in it right now. Let's say they play just starting caliber basketball, they're productive and they give you the best of their abilities. And let's say McNeely gives you even a little bit of that 5-star talent in his first year. Does that raise your confidence at all in their ability, or are you just that out on UConn this year?
No, it doesn't. No, I'm in on UConn being a good regular season team. They're going to win the Big East. I don't think that's a debate. I'm out on them completely making a run in March Madness. And once again, hope this doesn't make Dan Hurley's social media, whatever he's looking at. I just don't think this group in particular can win national championship. I don't think they can get to the Final Four. I just don't. Even if Hassan Diarra or Samson Johnson or Terrace Reed play to their capability or their max capability, I don't think they have the NBA talent, just to be completely honest with you. I mean, they're missing guys, Donovan Clingan, Tristan Newton. I mean, go 2 years ago, Jordan Hawkins, so many other guys, Andre Jackson. It's just a completely different pool of talent they have compared to these past 2 seasons where they just ran through teams because they were just more talented. They were more physical. They were more dominant than every single team.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's this group.
Would you go as far to say, I know you hinted at it earlier, but you think round of 32, round of 64, they go crashing out this year maybe?
I could definitely see round of 32. I could see a team finally catching them. They slip up, but I'm definitely not round of 64. I don't think Dan Hurley ever lose a round of 64 after New Mexico State a couple of years ago. I think we're in an era where he's just going to keep moving right along. And I mean, if they do bad this year, if they are around a 32 exit, like I just said, then I would be very scared if I'm a team in the Big East, because he could take it to another level. Just to put it out there, because he has a very good recruiting class coming in. I like Braylon Mold as a shooter. Eric Reeby, hope I'm pronouncing that correct. He can be a very good big man. Darius Adams, I think he's going to play the one for them. I think he's a very solid talent too. And I'm not too sure if Jacob Furphy, no relation to Johnny somehow, but they have a good group of people coming in for the 25 class, and then depending on who they return, I specifically Solomon Ball or Solo Ball and Aiden Mahaney. If those two return, I think it could get very dangerous for the team following. But this year's team, I'm just not really in on being a national title threat. I think they're going to be a very good regular season team, but I do think they're going to slip up, and this will be a very weird sighting for Dan Hurley's rest of tenure at UConn.
So where do you think? I mean, I know you said you predict around the 32 exit for him, Jack.
Yes. I will.
Do you
say
think
round
there's
32.
any realm in when they could go farther than that, or do you say their farthest they could possibly go this year's round 32?
No, they can go farther. I think they can hit Sweet 16. I just think this is the year team's finally going to catch them off guard. I just don't think. Fair. I just think their guys are just not. They're not overpowering teams based off their NBA talent this year. I think teams can finally play on their level, and we'll see. I mean, I could just be completely wrong, which is a genuine possibility, but I just do not. I don't trust in a backcourt containing Hassan Diar and as the starter, and then one of Terrence Reed or Samson Johnson at the center. I think that's two of the most important positions in college basketball to begin with, and I don't think they are at the level as a national championship compared to Duke or an Alabama this year.
What seed line? I'm asking everyone here, Dan. You can chime in too. What type of seed you guys think they're looking at this year? Me personally, I think maybe a 3 or a 4 is realistic, and they could have if they're high upside hits, I'd say 2 seed. I don't see.
I definitely think 3. I once again, I do think the Big East is kind of a little down this year. I think St. John's will be solid. Creighton's going to be good. Marquette, I'm going to be honest, would not be shocked if they missed the tournament. I think the loss of Tyler Kolek is going to greatly hurt them. Other than that, I don't really know any other teams that could elevate themselves into the tournament. Maybe, I don't think Seton Hall. Xavier's another team. They're going to get better. Zach Fremantle's back from injury. But I just don't. I think they're going to run the Big East. I don't think that's really a debate. I mean, it could be with maybe St. John's takes a step forward, but I just don't think this is the UConn team that can three-peat. Just put it out there. I just don't think they have the talent, like I said, that just don't have the NBA guys.
Dan Hurley's going to have your picture plastered all over that locker room by Monday.
You better watch your back on the way to work on Monday, Sully.
So I will be. You never know. I'm going to be climbing that ladder to put the American flag out, and one of Dan Hurley's goons might take me out from underneath 10 feet in the air. So we'll see.
And kind of bouncing off your ideas, Sully, I think they're going to be a 3 seed too. That the Big East is pretty down this year. You got St. John's, Marquette's got, practically the same team coming back. They're nothing flashy. Providence is mediocre at best. They got Bryce Hopkins coming off an ACL injury. Other than that, they're pretty down this year. And if Solo Ball, Aiden Mahaney, Diarra, Terrace Reed, those guys, if they're at least productive enough to run through the Big East this year, they should be just fine.
Yeah, I think if the Big East was as good as it has been in previous seasons, I could see them being a 3 to 4 seed, 4, maybe 5 at worst if they were to lose some big games. But, like Jack said, with the Big East being relatively weaker than it has been in previous years, I would predict them being, 2 through 3 seed at worst to 4, which, ain't a huge difference, but I guess when you look at the overall rankings, it's definitely a few numbers. Yeah, I don't think overall UConn, at least as of right now, has the just superstar college talent to make it all the way. Like I said, Aiden Mahaney, I like him a lot. I like Alex Caravan a lot. I think he's gonna have a good year, a 16-8 type season. But I just, you don't think so, Jack? You
No,
don't see
I mean
16-8 for
he can
Caravan?
put up 16, and if he puts up 16-8, I think that's bad for UConn. I'll just say it right now. I don't
That's
think that's a
fair.
good thing for UConn.
Fair.
I don't think he should be your first option. I think he is a
I
great
agree.
third or fourth option, 3-and-D level player who cuts, and he's very good at cutting without the ball. Like if you watch him, so's UConn team in general. I mean, he was stellar cutting out without the ball. But I don't think your team hits your ceiling if Alex Caravan's your first option. That's just what I think.
Agree with that.
I mean,
I
I don't
agree with
I don't
that.
think he's an All-American level player. I
don't think
I
he's
think
All-American, but I can see him being first team conference, second
Oh,
team
I-
at worst.
I think he'll definitely make the conference, like the Big East conference teams. I just once again, I don't believe a team can be sustainable. A team can sustain the amount of success UConn has had with Alex Caravan as a number one option, and he is still a very good player. I think he just works so much better as a third or fourth option to two NBA players.
And I like Liam McNeely a lot as a recruit, and like Blake was saying, he's a really good 3-and-D guy. But I kind of see him having a Dusty Stromer type season in his freshman year at Gonzaga, and maybe a little bit better than that. But I don't see him having like a Grady Dick year at Kansas. I see him, maybe the last option in the starting lineup, fourth at best, maybe third, but I seriously doubt that. I kind of see him sitting back, sitting in the corner, taking his thing and being up wherever he can.
I think his sophomore year, though, that's when he could start to make a bigger impact.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
If UConn gets him back for his sophomore year, there's the discussions to what they could be, and it's another title for Dan Hurley. But I mean, I don't think he's an NBA level player this year. I think it's going to take time because right now I only think he's a spot up shooter. I don't think he's going to do much without the ball. But yeah, I just don't. Once again, going back to the same topic, I just don't think this is the team to win another championship for UConn. I think
can
it's
agree with that.
possible. It's possibly
agree.
next year. Next year, definitely, I think has a better chance, depending on the guys who return, which I think it's going to be Solo Ball, Aiden Mahaney. They are going to need another center, even though they have Reeby who's a fringe 5-star, high 4-star. I just don't think this is the group in particular that can pull it out for UConn. I think it's next year. It's their shot in the third title, not back to back though.
can I throw
Solid
something
take.
out here real quick before we move on?
Let's hear it, Mr. Wildcat.
So if you look at this UConn roster, so a big thing for me with thinking they've got the potential that they've got is Dan Hurley. If you throw any other coach like a tier below Dan Hurley, do we think this team's like stock goes even more down?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
I figured.
I can't think of a coach like in particular, but like if you threw like, I don't know, Kevin Willard from Maryland, if you threw him somehow on this team, they're not making the tournament. They're gonna
let me throw
miss
a
the
name.
tournament
Damn,
completely.
Kevin Willard.
Let me
Sorry,
throw a
Kevin,
name
I
out
mean-
there for you. Like let's say we replace crazy world we live in. Dan Hurley moves on to the NBA. They retain that talent, but their coach this year is like a Scott Drew or somebody else. Do we think that makes their stock go down?
Okay, hold on. If
Yeah.
we're Scott Drew, hold on. We need to have a conversation with Scott Drew. He has been that national championship he had with Baylor, phenomenal. It's a great national championship considering what the program was about 20 years ago, where a player committed something that's just shouldn't be done. But Scott Drew has gotten very complacent at Baylor. And I know this is off topic now. Look at what their tournament runs have been the past three. 22 lost to UNC. 23 they lost to Creighton. 24 they lost to Clemson, I believe. He cannot get to the second weekend. I think that would benefit my case of saying, yeah, they're going to lose in the second weekend if he magically appeared as the coach of UConn.
That's fair.
I like Scott Drew as a coach, but I also agree he's gotten complacent. I think that Baylor squad that won the Natty that year was just so unbelievably stacked. Even with I think Matthew Mayer was coming off the bench for that team, wasn't
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
Mayer, Flagler, and then Chama Chachu was their
I mean,
main
that
three off
team
the
was
bench.
just absolutely stacked.
Yeah, that team
talent.
was
It was
very
insane.
loaded.
And While I still think Scott Drew is a solid coach, I definitely think it tanks their value a lot if he were to be coaching a team such as UConn. And yeah, I would not see him exiting the first weekend at all whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll
that
see.
was
I
coming
think
right there.
this is probably his last chance because Scott Drew. Sorry to get off topic. He is a very good team at Baylor this year. This is definitely Jeremy Roach, Norchad Omier, Jaden Nunn, and then VJ Edgecombe. That kid is insane.
He's athletic. He's a freak.
And we'll definitely talk about that Baylor Gonzaga game. Definitely a different time, but I would love to get that game. Is going to be up and down, possibly 100 points scored in the two halves without going overtime. That's how that game is going to be a sight to watch. Unfortunately, it's at 11:30 Eastern time, and the college basketball schedule makers are.
Man, I got to be at work that next morning. I can't be doing all that.
The schedule makers are horrible. And we there needs to be the schedule makers for college basketball are genuinely like there's no way a top 10 matchup between Gonzaga and Baylor should be at 11:30 Eastern time on a Monday.
Yeah.
That should be a prime time level game, and we should be scheduling more prime time games for the first week of college basketball. I know it's off topic still. We've completely strayed away from Dan Hurley and UConn repeating, but I mean, it's I don't know. If I'm gonna refrain what I think about the college basketball schedule makers.
Yeah, we got plenty of episodes in the future to elaborate.
Yeah. And since the next episode we have is probably going to be us reacting to that Gonzaga Baylor game. So I guess while we're on the topic, what do y'all score predictions and who do y'all think is going to win that ball game and individual performance wise, who do y'all think is going to do best, stand out?
I'm going to go. That's a tough one. I think I'm going to go Baylor wins 80-72. I think VJ Edgecombe will be the player of the game. I think that's going to be his coming out party. When the rumors were circulating, the crazy UK fans in the world are tracking Scott Drew to UK on his plane. And when we thought that was going to be the coach here.
Calling into Mexican restaurants.
Yep, I was so excited about the possibility of VJ maybe flipping to us. But I think he's going to have a breakout game, and they'll make a statement against Gonzaga, 80-72. We'll go with that.
I think Baylor is going to come out with the win, 83-76. Kind of bouncing off of Luke's idea. I think VJ Edgecombe is going to have one of his biggest games of the season. He's just got the goods, honestly. He's got the positional size. He can score at all three levels, and he's going to be a surefire lottery pick. And, I mean, he was dominating against the Bahamas team in practice. So, the
kid was balling for that Bahamas team.
Got it. Yeah.
He was going crazy. And if I'm correct, there was some NBA players he was going against and on that roster too, was there not?
Yeah. Buddy Hield was on his team as well as DeAndre for sure. I don't know who he won against though. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head, but there were other NBA guys on his team and he made it look like, this is my team. Get out of my way.
He was leading scorer if I'm correct, wasn't he?
He was definitely in the top three. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he was really impressive, and I've had doubts about his perimeter game, and I still sort of kind of do. I know, I mean, there's absolutely no denying he's one of the most athletic freshmen and overall athletic kids in college basketball this year. But I think he's poised for a good season, and I can see him outside of I think personally the top three in this year's draft class is one of the best top threes we've had in a long time. But I can easily see him and, I guess, Nolan Traore, which obviously ain't college basketball related, but I see them 5 rounding out the top 5 in this year's mock draft. And I guess personally for score prediction, I think Jeremy Roach is going to have a good game for Baylor. But honestly, and this may just be me going off of those practice videos I've seen from UConn, I feel like they're going to come out ready and prepared. I don't see them having much offseason rust. And honestly, I can see him pulling out a close one, but I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as y'all was saying. Maybe like 67-63-ish. I think it's going to be a good one, but I don't think it's going to be up in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Give me Baylor 89, like 89, 86. I saw the over under. It's like 155. It's 155. I will put $100 in there right now. It's going to be broken by the 10-minute mark of the second half.
Damn.
That game
Sully's
is going to be
feeling
up
good
and
about
down.
that one.
No, I'm putting the bank account
Place
on
your
that
money.
one.
Make
Sit
the
in the
full court
house.
trap sports book soon. But I guess going on the topic of Baylor and Scott Drew, our next topic, which is going to be the new look Kentucky Arkansas. You know, a lot of Kentucky fans, I'm sure you can back me on this tacket. A lot of Kentucky fans wanted Scott Drew, and there were some that weren't excited about Mark Pope when he got hired immediately. But it seems like the fan base has really kind of been impressed with him, how he's done in interviews and how he's just reacted. And even with the exhibition games that have been played, they seem to like the new offensive scheme that he's looking at. So, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
The biggest thing, I guess, with Pope and the whole Scott Drew thing, while we're talking about Scott Drew, a big concern UK fans had with him was, like Sully said, the lack of results recently. But I think Pope's going to do pretty good. I mean, I think when he first got hired, I was not a huge fan. I mean, we were talking about names like Dan Hurley, Scott Drew, and then Mark
Nate
Pope.
Oates.
Yeah, Nate Oates, and then Mark Pope is who we settled on. But he said all the right things. He nailed that press conference. I was there. That was unlike anything I've seen in Rupp. I've been going to games there probably about 2 years now, ever since I moved back in this area. And that was one of the craziest environments I've been in, and that wasn't even a game. But I think that he's going to be good. The honeymoon phase is going to end here soon, because what's going to happen when he loses a game? Like, how are the fans going to react? What's this going to look like? And I mean, it's reasonable to have your concerns about Pope. Like, I love the guy. He's a champion at UK. I know the older members of my family, they really look fondly on him, and all of Big Blue Nation's behind him. But it's coming quick. That matchup against Duke, it's on the way, and fans want to see results. That's part of the reason why Cal is no longer with us, because fans got tired of seeing the same stuff. They want to see some wins. But I think he's got all the pieces to be good. This roster this year, I'm sure we're going to dive more into it here in a little bit. But I like the pieces he built in the portal with the time crunch that he had between getting hired and all that stuff. So I think he's going to I think he's going to work out for UK. This year, it's kind of a trial and error year, but next year and the years moving forward, I think that he's going to end up being a risk that paid off.
Bouncing off that, I like what you said about how you think they're going to be decent, pretty good this year. Personally, I think they're going to be like a top 10, 15 ranked team by midseason. I really think that Mark Pope is doing a tremendous job. This is kind of like off topic. It's more so to do with recruiting, but he's nailing the recruiting trail. Kentucky fans want to see production instead of just how I would say like how Calipari, he carried himself a little different than what Pope is right now. Pope, he even before he got the job, while he was BYU's coach, he was wearing his full uniform and chanting CATS, 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 cats. Like the dude wants to be there. He wants to win. And after watching one of the games in the exhibition against, I believe, Kentucky Westland, I was very intrigued by the offensive sets they were running. They were more spaced out. They weren't like solely based on isolation ball like we had seen in the past like few years with the Kentucky teams. I thought the ball movement was tremendous. They were actually hitting shots efficiently from behind the arc. And yeah, I think they're going to be a solid team this year.
Yeah, I think this Kentucky team is going to be pretty good. I wouldn't say top 10, top 15, to be honest with you. I think this SEC is either the best conference or the second best behind the Big 12, depending on what they do. But I mean, I think a good first year for Mark Pope is 1, making the tournament, 2, making the second week. And you do that, you have matched John Calipari in his last 4 seasons as the Kentucky head coach from 2020 to 2024. And that's already a step in the right direction. Now, if he gets to the second weekend, that's already a very big step because, like Blake said, recruiting. I did not think he could be able to recruit the way he did. They're most likely going to get a Caden Lewis. They already have Jasper Johnson. They have Malachi Moreno. And there's a good chance
they end up with Caleb Wilson. We'll see, though, depending on what happens with Arkansas over there. Well, we can talk about that a little later. But yeah, I think if he can get to the Sweet 16 with this group, or farther than the Sweet 16, I think that's a huge tell. So I think Mark Pope, he can have a great run program here at Kentucky. I mean, we've seen this. If this group can make the Sweet 16, then I think that's a huge tell for what Kentucky can do in the future, because they're going to be adding more talent. And obviously, it's the University of Kentucky. They're a blue blood. They're always going to have NBA talent coming, which I think is a huge sign for Mark Pope. And I don't believe he should be going after one and done to every single recruiting class. I believe he should be establishing a groundwork, have a couple guys who are going to be program level players, such as Colin Chandler, Trent Noah, Travis Perry. And then you have a couple one and dones like Jasper Johnson, and then potentially Caleb Wilson if he commits to the University of Kentucky.
Circling back kind of to what Blake said, what I really liked about the exhibition games, just to finally, like, we got to see, you know, his style of play. The spacing, everybody is out of the paint, kind of just trying to get that 3-point offense going. And
Yeah,
I
like
think,
a 5 out.
yeah, 5 out.
Yeah.
And I think, I forgot which player it was, but he made a comment in the post game that Pope, he'll pull you out if you're not shooting. Like, he wants his players shooting the ball. If it's open, he wants you to take it. And I like that philosophy personally. And I mean, it could very well come back to haunt him in March if you get a really bad cold 3-point shooting night. But I think that is a big refresher for UK fans who, for the last couple of years with Cal, it's kind of just been like that old dribble drive that he tried to utilize in his early days with like John Wall, that kind of that 2010 to probably about 2017 era, I think, is when that kind of quit working for him. But I just think that his style of play, the fans are going to love it. And also, like Blake said, the dude just loves Kentucky. Like, that guy, he bleeds blue probably harder than just about anybody. So if you get any kind of sustained level of success out of him, UK's got their guy for the future for quite some time, I would imagine, because I can't see him leaving for any other job.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I was definitely surprised with how well he's done on the recruiting trail so far with this upcoming class. And yeah, I mean, it's looking like all signs are pointing to getting to a Caden Lewis. And then I think if we do get him, I think that rolls right into us getting Caleb Wilson. And that would be huge for them. I mean, that'd be absolutely gigantic. And yeah, I think the fans are happy with the fact that they're getting a coach that was a national champion with the school, former player. I think they love that. And, like Taggett said, he's clearly been real adamant on wanting his team to shoot the ball. Even, people like Brandon Garrison, who don't necessarily need to be shooting the ball all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I respect the philosophy. I respect that, hey, if you don't shoot the ball, get out. If Brandon Garrison shoots a 3 in a real game, you gotta send him to the back of the bench. There's no way you can let that happen. He didn't shoot one game. He didn't shoot hit 1 3 at Oklahoma State. How is that like? I mean, I respect
part
it.
Was pretty crazy to me.
I respect the philosophy as long as Amari Williams isn't out there pulling up from deep.
And him too. Yeah, I don't want to see that. That would be awful.
I
mean, stay at the rim, young boy.
Yeah, we need him as the anchor down low.
It's pretty much just live by the sword, die by the sword with that. And I mean, when it comes down to it, the best March Madness team is the team that gets hot right at that time, and they'll usually stay hot throughout the whole tournament. So that's just what you got to hope for. I mean, there's enough shooters on that team to where a few of them may have bad nights, but those same nights, you could have a few guys that are, having great nights. I think Kobe Bree is one of the best shooters in college basketball this year, 3-point related specifically. And Jackson Robinson is he can do way more things than just shoot the rock from outside the arc. But yeah, I mean, overall, I like the squad he got together in the transfer portal. I think it's really deep. I think there's guys that, if one guy goes down, I think there's plenty of guys that can fill his spot, fill his role. I mean, I could easily see Kentucky playing, 9 players in a game this year. I could see them having a really deep bench. But, I mean, as far as that goes, with Calipari leaving and going to Arkansas, I mean, I know all of us have thoughts on that. I feel like, personally, it was kind of a win-win for both scenarios, or for both teams at least. Kentucky is obviously fans were getting tired of just seeing NBA talent come through for a season and then we get a whole new roster. We were getting tired of that. I mean, people want to see ball games being won, tournament success like they're used to. And then, on the other hand, for Arkansas, Eric Musselman did not have the season last year that I guess everyone was kind of hoping for. And they just got, a huge upgrade. As far as I can tell, it seems like all the Arkansas fans have been super happy with getting Cal. And he obviously brought a haul of Kentucky players and added a few guys in the transfer portal. I mean, Jonell Davis, you got Jonas Adu, if I'm saying that correctly. I think he's a pretty solid big man. And yeah, I mean, just overall, their roster looks pretty solid, but I'll leave that up to you guys to decide.
I think the Arkansas fan base should undoubtedly be over the top celebrating this like it's a national championship. Yeah, Calipari might not be the same type of guy he was in the early 2010s. Still a Hall of Fame coach. Eric Musselman was looking at the Louisville job during January. He was done. He was tapped out. He was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And you have a guy who I believe has a chip on his shoulder. He got ran out of town. I mean, that's hard to do nowadays, especially with coaches, just in general. Running somebody out of town is insane. And I think that a testament to how insane that Kentucky fan base is. But I mean, this guy, he should have a chip on his shoulder. He realized, hey, I'm no longer an untouchable person. If things don't go the right way, I could be out of a job, as we just saw. But I think this is a great move for Arkansas. It's a win. It's a huge win. They're going to be able to recruit. They're going to get 5-star talent to Fayetteville. I mean, you already have a couple of DJ Wagner. I think Boogie Fland is going to be really good. I know, once again, exhibitions aren't everything. Boogie Fland looks really, really cute. He looks better than DeJuan Harris.
Very good.
DeJuan Harris has been in college for 5 to 6 years. I'm not exactly sure now, but he's going to be very good for him. And then, I mean, Big Z too. He's got some talent. Very talented.
That's one good thing about Arkansas is that with, they still got all them freshmen coming in, but they got a lot of guys returning, from the Kentucky year that they're bringing over. A lot of guys that I think were supposed to have great freshman years and still had pretty solid freshman seasons. But I mean, now that they're in their sophomore year, junior and above, I think they're looking at a really solid roster this year.
Now, the one thing I do question with them. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good. And those are guys that have experience with a year of SEC ball. And we know how important experience is in this era of college basketball. So I think that's definitely going to be something that benefits them during the course of the year.
But yeah, the one thing I was going to touch on is the one thing I do disagree with Calipari on with his roster makeup. He says he only wants 8 to 9 scholarship players. I don't think that's the way you go in today's game. I think you have to have 10, and especially with the injury history he had past couple of years at Kentucky, 2 injuries, your team is in deep waters. Because I mean, it happened last year. Every single big man was out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember 2 years. Severe Wheeler was it wasn't playing after I guess a couple of games. I guess called it quits. I don't think we'll ever know the exact situation. And then the year prior, Ty Washington, Severe Wheeler again. Both were going down every other game. I mean, we'll see what he does. Maybe he switches his philosophy with the 8 to 9 guys. I just don't think that's would work at all with Arkansas. They're going to have talent. They're always going to have guys. But you need to fill out a bench, especially in the SEC. They're going to be games are going to be grinded. You're going to have extremely athletic individuals in the SEC. I think the SEC is the most athletic conference every single season. There are guys jumping through the gym every single game. And I think to keep up with this, you need to have at least 10 plus guys. I don't think 8 or 9 cuts it at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. Personally, I think the Razorbacks are going to have a great year. They kind of have, they're showing shades of the elite 3-guard lineups that Calipari's kind of rolled out with in recent years, most notably the 2019 to 2020 team that Cal had with Higgins, Emmanuel Quickly, and I can't think of the other one right now.
Maxey.
Yeah, I forgot the best one, of course. That's what happens when you're half asleep, I guess.
Hey, it's late at night. You're good.
Yeah, it's the late night pod.
But anyways, yeah, those 3 together were insane. I think that Boogie Fland, DJ Wagner, and Jonell Davis, they're not going to be as dynamic as a group, but I do believe they're going to be very, very good not to the extent of that, but they're going to be very good together. Boogie Flan, kind of to go off him. And I know exhibition games aren't everything, but going against Kansas, even though they were down a couple very good players, finishing with 22 points, 5 assists, 6 steals, and 2 boards is insane numbers for a top 5 team, top 3 team in the nation. I really thought the Boogie excelled in two-way opportunities. He excelled in pick and roll opportunities as well. And also DJ Wagner, who Luke kind of touched on earlier about being a breakout guy. I also think he's going to have a great year. He looked extremely comfortable from the floor, especially from behind the arc, which is very eye-opening for Razorback fans because last year he had struggled with that. And I think he's looking a lot like the first half of the season version that he did last year, especially against how he did against Louisville for Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, I think just circling back to like the whole Cal going to Arkansas thing that Sully touched on earlier, it was definitely time. He put out that farewell video, I remember, and I think the phrase he kind of coined for that was it's time for this program to hear another voice. And I think that's the truth because, like I said earlier, Pope's come in here, he said all the right things, and that's not to discredit anything that's Cal did for us because Cal was, I mean, his resume speaks for itself. He won the title. I think he's got the most active wins right now. And the last couple of years, yeah, they were a letdown, but I I wouldn't say that he's a failure of a coach by any means. He may not be the coach that he once was, but I still think that he's definitely going to bring something to Arkansas that they needed to after going through the down portion of the Musselman tenure towards the end. And I just think that I would say that maybe Elite Eight is a good range that I would see Arkansas going to this year. They've got the roster pieces. I'm expecting a big year from DJ, like I hinted earlier. And when the talks of Cal leaving were at its height, I remember a lot of things that I talked about with some of you guys and everyone else. Is the one guy I didn't want to see leave out of the freshman class was Boogie Flan. And outside of that, I mean, this was kind of a year where you could depart from Cal and not hurt too much. But I think Boogie's going to be a dog for them. He looked great in the exhibition. You don't put stock in exhibition games too hard, like we've said, but he's definitely proven that he's got that scoring ability, the playmaking ability, and I think that he's going to be one of the best freshman guards in the country for sure. And I think where you're really going to see how good this team can be is guys like Zvonimir Visic. Obviously, you want to see him kind of take it to that next level. I mean, last year UK, he had the Georgia game that everybody remembers where he just went nuclear. But other than that, he was kind of non-existent, if we're being honest, in the terms of that UK team. So I think you need to step up from him. Adu Thiero, I love Adu. I miss him. I wish he was still here. I think that he's going to be a really important piece to them, kind of as a just pure athletic guy, and he provides a spark on defense. And if he can develop more of a jumper too and show more signs of that, I think that'd be very encouraging. And then you got Jonas Adu, John L. Davis, proven commodities at other schools. But my biggest question for John L. is FAU, obviously. They had the Final Four run with him, and he proved that he's capable of leading a team. But will he be able to make it through like the real meat of the SEC schedule and be able to just sustain like an elite level or just even good level of play? Because I mean, let's be real, the conference that FAU is in compared to the SEC, that's a whole different ball
Way
game.
different ball game.
Way different ball game. So
especially with how the SEC looks this year.
yeah, the pieces are there, and then if you can get something out of Carter Knox, Billy Richmond as well, those guys that are kind of lower level freshmen from what Cal's like elite guys are, I think you could be looking at something good there. And that DJ Wagner Boogie Flan combo, I just keep circling back to it. I'm really excited to see how that works out. Because I mean, to use a football analogy here, like you got LSU wide receivers and you got Cal's guards. Like in terms of college sports, you can't get much better than that. So In closing, it's a good move for both parties. I think both schools have equal reason to be excited. And February 1st, I may have to take out a little bit of a loan, but I promise you I will be in Rupp Arena for that because that's going to be one hell of a sight.
I do have a couple questions, actually. One for each program. So you mentioned Aduthiero. How is Calipari going to fit him into this roster? Let's be honest. There's a good chance they run that 3-guard of DJ, Nelly Davis, and Boogie Fland. And then you have your bigs, Big Z, Trevon Brazile, who returned, and then Jonas Adu. Where does Aduthiero fit into this roster at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. He could get left in the mix because I think that would be a bad move on Cal's part. Like, I know that you want to get your best players out there and your best guards, but a guy like Adu, a glue guy, somebody that's proven it for a year in college now, and I mean, freshman year Adu, he wasn't crazy by any means, but he was still a solid player. I think if they want to have the success that they want, they're going to have to find a way to incorporate him and some other pieces in there, but that comes back to, will Cal adapt? Like, is he going to change his ways? Is it going to be the dribble drive offense of old, or is he going to try and modernize a little bit more and show some more flair like he did last year with that high-power UK offense? But we'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think, in all honesty, I don't know. I'm not too sure about the 3-ball lineup. And before that exhibition game was played against Kansas, my thoughts were kind of it was going to be DJ and Janelle running the 1 and 2, and then you'd have Adu, and then Jonas Adu, of course, at the 5, and then I don't know, maybe Big Z or Trevon Brazile running the 4. But I mean, honestly, running because Adu's about 6'7", 6'8". You could theoretically put him at the 4 and then run that 3-ball, that 3-guard, lineup, which still, I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see because Adu, he can guard the 1 through 4 spots. But I would like to see him in the starting lineup. I think, since he came to Kentucky as a 3-star recruit and he was 6'3", 180. Just the way he's grown, physically and then just as a ball player as well has been insane to see. And I can easily see him. If he gets in the right role at Arkansas and he does his thing, I could see him being a first-round pick in the NBA draft this year.
Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Jonas Adu, isn't he dealing with an injury right now of some sort?
I know it's not. I believe so.
It's
Yeah,
not severe, because I remember he was held out of the Kansas game because it's a foot injury, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I believe so.
And I don't know how long he'll be out for, but I mean, Arkansas, I haven't looked too deep into their non-conference schedule, but I would imagine they're going to have some tests in there. And
they play Baylor pretty early too.
And you definitely want to have Jonas Adu in there because he's going to provide that physicality and that dominant force in the paint that he was at Tennessee for the last couple of years.
Sure, for sure. Well, that's got pretty much every topic we had out of the way today, fellas. So I guess we could say that was episode 1 completed. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. We got some big news coming on the way, a lot of guest appearances we have in the works. So be sure to tune in for the following episodes. I'm sure episode 2 is going to be a big one. And we may very well have a big name that you've heard of before on the show for an interview. So without a doubt, make sure to watch and follow all our socials. I know we're active on YouTube, which is probably where you're going to be watching this at. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, every social we have, we'll link them below. And yeah, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And that's episode 1 of the Full Court Trap podcast.
Hey, one more thing before we go, Dan. I noticed during the UK portion you were referring to the Wildcat. You got something you want to tell the viewers before we sign off?
The second I kept saying like us and we, I was like, shit, man, they're probably on to me. But yeah,
let them know. Let them know. Yeah,
we're here. We're
He's
here.
grabbing it right now. That's crazy.
CATS, yes, sir.
I'm a Kentucky fan, but I'm a ball fan before anything. I've been hooping since I could walk. I've been shooting a basketball since I was strong enough to get it up in the rim. I love ball before anything, and I'm gonna keep it real no matter what.
Yeah, this is a no bias podcast, guys.
You're no bias.
Yes,
I picked Louisville as my unranked team to watch for. Look what I'm wearing right now. No bias here.
See?
None at all.
But yeah, guys, that does it for episode 1. Like I said, I appreciate everybody tuning in, and that's that. We're out.
Appreciate you
Sir.
guys.